The Michigan DNR Hunt Fish app is your digital connection to all things hunting and fishing in Michigan. Buy, store, and display your hunting and fishing licenses, check your points and chances for elk and bear, apply for the draw, and view drawing results. Access all the hunting and fishing regulations, view your hunter safety certificate, and report your harvest, all from within the Michigan DNR Hunt Fish app. Just click the app banner at the top of the page for download instructions at michigan.gov/hunting. You know what that sound means. It's time for the Michigan DNR's Wildtalk Podcast. Welcome to the Wildtalk Podcast, where representatives from the DNR's Wildlife Division chew the fat and shoot the scat about all things habitat, feathers, and fur. With insights, interviews, and your questions answered on the air, you'll get a better picture of what's happening in the world of wildlife here in the great state of Michigan.
Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new year and a brand new season of the Wildtalk Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Lincoln, and sharing the airwaves with me today is Eric Hilliard. Happy New Year, Eric.
Happy New Year to you, too. It's crazy to me that I have been editing and producing the show for so long, and it's just, the time really does sneak up on you.
Yeah, you've seen every iteration and every season of the podcast so far. I've been around for about 5 seasons now, and so much has changed in that time frame. And I'm excited to see how this new season evolves too. This is definitely the season of scheming and plotting. We've got a couple ideas we're going to try to test out. We're going to look for your listeners' input, see what you're liking so far, so that when season 9 rolls around, we might have something up our sleeve.
So how do our listeners provide feedback to us?
Oh, such a great question. So glad you asked. Well, we've got a listener survey that is open right now, and we ask all of our listeners to check it out because we want to hear from you what you like or don't like hearing from us. So this listener survey is open and you can find a link to it in the show notes. But basically, we just want to know what you love about the show and where we can improve. And completing that listener survey also gives you an extra chance to win one of the coveted Wildtalk Podcast camp mugs. So there is something in it for you as much as we will get such meaningful feedback about how to improve this show for our dear, dear sweet listeners.
That's right. We'll probably pick maybe a couple extra names, maybe more than a couple extra names for a Wildtalk Podcast camp mug randomly out of all the people that provide us with their email address saying that they want the mug. Don't worry, we're not going to do anything else with that email other than contact you if you are one of the people that we happen to select as one of our lucky winners for participating in the survey, because we appreciate it.
We certainly do. So help us make this show something that you want to continue to listen to.
So speaking of, Rachel, what do we have lined up in this show, the first show of season 8?
Well, for this episode, we are heading to Michigan's southeast region to chat about all things habitat. Then we'll fly over to learn more about the snow goose and then learn a thing or two about coyotes and why we're likely to start seeing them and hearing them more frequently this month. Remember, we are also still celebrating the 50th anniversary of Michigan's endangered species law. You can still donate to help protect the species that call Michigan home and hear your name read aloud on the podcast. Of course, we'll have our regular Mug Me trivia question for you to win a mug of your own. And if you want to go beyond hearing your name on air and you want to instead hear your voice on the air, send us a wildlife question. You can record a question using your phone and send it to us for a wildlife expert to respond to your question. We'll see if you can stump our wildlife division experts. And I will say that conservation is an ever-evolving field, and we know some of you are pretty plugged into the latest news, so if you've got any burning questions you want to ask, please send those in to us. And of course, we'll have our regular Mug Me trivia question for you to win a mug of your own. And with that, let's get into it. Season 8 starts now.
A base license for $11 is a fair fare to go hunt hare, or even a squirrel or two if you care. You hunted deer last month, the license is already there, so no more money from your pocket or your billfold square. To get your share of squirrel or hare to eat yourself or share with flair and fanfare with a nice set of flatware at a table you prepare, just bundle up warm with something to wear and Don't miss when you shoot or you're liable to swear and possibly despair if you see no more signs of hide nor hair. So, happy hunting to all, and y'all take care.
Welcome back to the Wildtalk Podcast. Today we have Olivia Triltsch joining us. She is the Habitat Program and Partnership Coordinator for Michigan United Conservation Clubs, where she coordinates the on-the-ground program. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself to us and tell us about your role at MUCC?
I am the primary coordinator for the on-the-ground program at MUCC, and that allows me to coordinate projects with volunteers and partners across the state in the upper and lower peninsula in order to create better habitat for fish and wildlife.
That is certainly a necessary and probably super fun job to have. So thanks for joining us so we can hear a little bit more about it. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with the MUCC On the Ground program, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, definitely. On the Ground is a volunteer-based wildlife habitat improvement program for public lands. Our volunteers often come from various backgrounds extending between consumptive and non-consumptive users of Michigan. The primary goal of the program is to improve fish and wildlife habitat while also increasing public access to lands throughout the state. Since the program's inception in 2013, the program has improved over 4,000 acres of fish and wildlife habitat, which we could not have done without our over 5,300 volunteers helping us out.
5,300, that's a lot of volunteers. Do you get all 5,300 at one time to every habitat project? It seems like maybe too many hands in the pot, so to speak.
Yeah, the 5,300 volunteers have been over time since that 2013 time period. We've had recurring volunteers in that time and other new ones as we come along. It's always nice to see a couple of little hands in the mix as well.
Okay, so you have like kid-friendly types of projects too. So it could be, a wide age range of volunteers is who you have working with you.
Yeah, sometimes at our regular on-the-ground programs, so we have families coming, bringing all their kids or grandkids along to help do the heavy lifting or what have you. But we also have an on-the-ground junior program, which focuses on getting kids in schools out into the habitat work and focusing on how to improve habitat for fish and wildlife themselves. So that way we can create the future conservationists.
Awesome. What a great program. We mentioned habitat projects. Is there any specific type of habitat project that On the Ground focuses on?
Yeah, our work ranges anywhere between native plantings for pollinators to annual river cleanups. Our most common habitat projects are tree plantings, brush pile building, and invasive species removal. However, we do a range of habitat projects depending on what the target location needs based on guidance from DNR biologists and other knowledgeable partners.
Now, with those habitat projects, are those in specific locations in the state, or do you offer projects across the whole state? We've got listeners all over the state, so can they join these MUCC habitat projects anywhere?
Yeah, we try to spread our habitat projects out a little bit throughout both the upper and lower peninsula as much as we can. We typically focus on the public lands like state game areas primarily. However, there are some events out there where we do work at nature centers and other public areas like that.
And how do these projects benefit Michigan's wildlife and their habitats?
The benefits are actually based on the location and the project type of each project that we do. For example, this past October, we did a mass-producing tree planting, and that benefited local game, including pheasants, turkey, white-tailed deer, in addition to non-game species like pollinators and songbirds. As for our brush pile building events, these create habitat for small game species, as well as various amphibians and reptiles. As a result of this habitat work, hunters can benefit along with predators like birds of prey.
You mentioned earlier that these are child-friendly events. What exactly are volunteers doing? I can't imagine you're slapping a hard hat on a first grader and throwing a chainsaw into their hands, sending them out into the woods. So I'm assuming there's probably age-appropriate activities, but what are some of those activities that if somebody does come out and volunteer that they could expect to be doing?
For every one of our junior programs that are specifically dedicated towards the younger generations, we provide the gear for each of the programs. However, we always do something that is age appropriate. So for the younger kids, if it's just a seed planting, like a pollinator garden, then we can do that. If they're a little bit older and maybe a little bit more apt to carry around larger branches, then we can definitely do the brush piles. So it's based on what we think that the children can handle for the junior events. For the regular on-the-ground events, those are determined ahead of time. So if there is a on-the-ground program in your area, but might not be well suited to you, more than likely we will have another one in the near future that will be suited to an entire family.
And what is a well-suited, when you say well-suited, could you explain that a little bit more as far as are you referring to activities based on ability and things of that nature, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, so each of our different types of projects actually have different skill levels that might be required. And different materials that might be required. So we make sure to identify those obstacles ahead of time. Sometimes if there is a harder project that's going on, like elk exclosure removal, then that might not be well suited for children. But sometimes we are able to actually coordinate the event in order to have two projects going on at once, where somebody that might not be able to do that kind of work is able to still participate in the habitat work of the day.
Yeah, that's really good information. I've been out on a couple on-the-ground projects in the last couple of years, and it always seems like there's one main goal of the project, but there's still several different types of jobs to accomplish that goal, right? So even if you've got your kids out there and they're pulling along the invasive species that have been cut, that's a great job for kids. Speaking from experience, my 8-year-old loved it because then he turned all of the glossy buckthorn stems into a sword, which he promptly ran around and hit his father with multiple times. But there's always various tasks and things that people with different abilities or ages can participate in. These really are very family friendly, and it's a little bit of something for everybody on these projects. Is there a particular project that stands out to you that has been especially impactful in your time with MUCC?
There is one program that we actually do annually. It's a partnership with the Kirtland Warbler Alliance, Huron Pines, Michigan DNR, and also sponsored by the Saginaw Children's Zoo. So there's a lot of work that goes into this project, but it is actually a jack pine planting in the northern Lower Peninsula that we do annually. These jack pines are the key habitat for Kirtland's warbler, a rare species in Michigan. This annual planting is critical to perpetuate habitat for the species, as they only breed in young jack pine forest stands in Michigan, parts of Wisconsin, and Ontario. While this warbler species was delisted in 2019 after a census, we do continue this ongoing management to prevent this species from rejoining the endangered species list. Due to our devoted volunteers, we were able to improve 6 acres of habitat in one day this past year. We are expecting to do this event again this year, so keep your eye out for details.
Yes, those are certainly important projects. What other upcoming projects do you have?
I'm glad you asked. We will be joining Portage Parks and Recreation and the Michigan DNR for a Stewardship Day on January 11th at Gore Neck State Game Area from 9 a.m. to noon. Our goal with this project is to remove woody invasives like glossy buckthorn to allow room for native species to regrow. We recommend volunteers bring work gloves, closed-toed waterproof footwear, or waders. Lunch and gear will be provided, as well as a volunteer gift at the end. In addition to this event, we also have 2 wood duck box projects coming up this winter. On the ground will be at Shiawassee River State Game Area January 25th, and Maple River State Game Area on February 15th. To learn more about any of these events, feel free to visit our on-the-ground calendar at mucc.org/ontheground and follow along with our blog posts and social media to learn more about upcoming events across the state. I also wanted to add, if your New Year's resolution is improving habitat for wildlife, we can help make that happen. Just come out to one or a few of our events and connect with other volunteers with a passion for wildlife.
Most certainly, yeah. I would also just add, if you have New Year's resolutions about building community, or you just want to get outside just a little bit more, these events are such a good way to do that because they are community builders. You're going to be there with like-minded people. You're just trying to help your local wildlife species. For so many of these projects, you're doing the work for local wildlife. And it's also just it's a great way to get outside for a couple of hours, and you get a lunch afterwards. So come on, people, there's free pizza. And I will be with Olivia at the January 11th Stewardship Day at the Gore Neck State Game Area, which is the first ever and only urban state game area in the state of Michigan. And it's a really cool place. So come check it out. It should be a really good time. Well, thank you, Olivia, so much for joining us and telling us all about your awesome work and the great work MUCC does through the On the Ground program. We are big fans, and we really encourage people to sign up to be a volunteer and check out projects in their neck of the woods. All right, folks, you will want to stick around because All Things Feathers is coming up next.
There are many camping and lodging opportunities available in Michigan's state parks. When you choose state park campgrounds, you get more than just a campsite. State parks offer a diverse range of recreational opportunities including hands-on instructional classes, nature programs, places to fish, boat launches, family-friendly events, and much more. Reservations can be made 6 months in advance, so why wait? Visit midnrreservations.com or call 1-800-44-PARKS to make a reservation.
Welcome back. We're talking about a bird that's as tough as it is beautiful, the snow goose. Now, if you've ever looked up and seen a massive flock of white birds blotting out the sky during the winter months or making a racket loud enough to wake the neighbors, you have probably met these birds. The snow goose looks like a goose. Like the sort of iconic white goose, like Jemima Puddle Duck or the plastic porch geese that some people put on their patios and dress up for the holidays. Now, there are two versions of the snow goose, and the sciencey word for version is morph. The white morph has these all-white feathers on its head and body with these black wing tips. And then there is a remixed version, which is more professionally known as the blue morph, which has a dark body and a white head. It's the same species, just a little bit of a different wardrobe option. Both color morphs have orange to pink colored feet and bills with a black patch on their bills that looks a little bit like a grin. Snow geese are pretty much the rock stars of the goose world, and they travel in these huge groups, and with their sheer numbers making them impossible to ignore. And like all true celebrities, they love a good tour. A migration tour, that is. Snow geese breed up in some of the harshest real estate you can imagine, on the tundra of Canada and northern Alaska. Now, these birds will set up camp near ponds, places like coastal salt marshes or rivers where the snow is melting early. Now, they're quite picky about their nest sites, and for good reasons. If you're going to raise a family in the Arctic, location is everything. These geese will have between 2 and 6 eggs, and once the chicks hatch, their families will move to areas with plenty of grass or other plants to eat, places like tidal marshes or wetland areas. But once the spring and fall arrive, snow geese are migrating. Now, during migration, they fly along the 4 major North American flyways, stopping in lakes, marshes, or farm fields across the country. And as it is for so many other waterfowl species, Michigan is the ultimate pit stop or destination for the snow goose on their migration journeys.
That's because they see the open palm of the state of Michigan. It's so inviting. They just can't help but land like a little bird in a big hand.
America's high five, baby. Now, the snow goose tend to be more common in Illinois and western Indiana, but they can still be found throughout much of our state. According to iNaturalist, there are observations of snow geese well documented from late October through March. And most recently, they've been observed in southeast Michigan, hanging out in cornfields with Canada geese. Now, the best and fastest way to differentiate snow geese from Canada geese is the bright white head of the snow goose, which is in stark contrast to the mostly black head of the Canada goose. In the winter and during migration, snow geese have been known to hit up farm fields for grains, roots, and young plant stems. Basically, they're the ultimate foragers. Snow geese are voracious eaters and will rip up entire plants out of the ground to eat them, roots and all. And goslings, well, they're on the anything goes menu, and they will eat flowers, berries, or even insect larvae. So these birds, they're pretty hungry, which is understandable after they fly thousands of miles. They're quite hardy. After all, they are born in the Arctic, but they're also pretty committal. And when it comes to family life, snow geese mate for life. Now, when it is nesting time, the female picks the site and gets straight to work. She will do the digging and the plucking down of feathers from her own chest to add to the materials that build the nest. And if the site is exposed, they will build massive nests up to 6.5 feet across to keep their eggs and babies protected inside. And the male, well, he's there kind of for moral support and for predator watch duty. As I was learning about their parental roles, all I was doing is picturing, the female doing the heavy lifting. She's collecting sticks and feathers and materials for the nest, and the male is just pacing back and forth with this "I got this" mentality as he patrols for predators. Dynamics.
Is he really patrolling, or is he just lazy and doesn't want to help with the nest work?
I am no snow goose biologist to be able to crack that code, but I would have to guess if there's a predator in the area, it's probably a really important job to be patrolling. So he probably contributes equally to their little bird household.
Yeah, I suppose the male probably does need to keep an eye open for the occasional polar bear that might come charging in to have a little goose pate.
Yeah, totally. Polar bears are a threat to these birds and their nests, as well as Arctic foxes, gulls, and snowy owls.
Man, there's just an entire cornucopia of potential predators in the Arctic.
There certainly are. There is awesome biodiversity everywhere you go. Super cool predator-prey relationships, even in the Arctic. Once the goslings are grown, though, snow geese are strong flyers and swimmers, and they can even dive short distances to escape trouble. And trouble's not just from predators. Snow geese can sometimes be too successful at reproduction. Their populations have grown rapidly since the mid-20th century, possibly due to warming conditions of their Arctic breeding grounds. Now, throughout much of the 20th century, wildlife management officials restricted hunting in the interest of conservation, but by the 1970s, they switched to worrying about keeping goose numbers in balance with their habitat. Because snow geese nest in remote areas, their breeding colonies have only minimally been impacted by humans. So now the geese themselves may degrade their own habitat by grubbing vigorously for food during the early breeding season, which not only reduces their own breeding success, but also compromises nesting shorebirds.
So is that where the term "get your grub on" comes from? Because they're grubbing in their nesting habitat?
Could be. Birds gotta eat. So in the United States and Canada, hunting plays a big role in population management. Over 500,000 snow geese are harvested annually. If you're interested in hunting opportunities for snow geese here in Michigan, make sure to check out the waterfowl hunting seasons and regulations at michigan.gov/waterfowl. So in conclusion, the snow goose is tough, loud, and maybe a little messy, but hopefully you'll get the chance to see them while they're here in Michigan. If you want to up your winter waterfowl identification skills, you should check out the My Birds Winter Waterfowl Identification webinar, which was released a few years ago, but it was recorded and is an excellent resource for brushing up on the weird waterfowl that winter here in Michigan. And we can link to that webinar in our show notes. To see a snow goose, keep an eye out near open water and open fields this winter. We've said it before, but we'll say it again. Michigan's wetland wonders, these areas of public lands where we create habitat for waterfowl and wetland species, are awesome areas for you to check out and for free. If you want to see where those locations are, visit michigan.gov/wetland wonders to plan your visit. So the next time you see a flock of geese, take a moment to see if you can spot the white head of the snow goose to welcome these travelers to our great state of Michigan.
Pure Michigan hunt applications are on sale now. If you want your shot of what is considered Michigan's ultimate hunt, pick up a $5 application or two. There's no limit to the number you can buy. If you're one of the 3 lucky winners, you'll get a hunting prize package worth thousands, as well as licenses for elk, bear, spring and fall turkey, antlerless deer, and first pick at a managed waterfowl area for a reserved hunt. Purchase anywhere hunting licenses are sold or online at michigan.gov/PMH.
Try to catch me howling at the moon. Try to catch me howling at the moon. Try to catch me howling.
This episode, we're discussing one of Michigan's most adaptable and often misunderstood predators, the coyote. These sleek and skittish canines have an incredible knack for survival, and they're found in every single county of our state. We'll take a look as to why they thrive here, why we're going to start seeing and hearing more of them this month, and why they're such an important part of Michigan's ecosystems. Coyotes are a native wildlife species here in Michigan, and generally they are a brownish to grayish color with white fur on their throat and belly, though their fur is highly variable in coloration from animal to animal. The fur is quite dense and thick and often gives them a larger appearance than their actual body size. They typically weigh between 25 and 45 pounds, and on average, the coyote stands 1 foot 6 inches at the shoulder, where species that look similar to it, such as the gray wolf, stand at a taller height at their shoulder at about 2 feet 2 inches. For a visual and a size reference, coyotes resemble like a medium-sized German shepherd.
Yeah, I saw a coyote running through my neighborhood a few years ago. It was chasing after a deer that was far faster than it was, and it was just running down the road, kind of watching this deer run away from it. But it had the happiest look of a canine next to Coco the Chihuahua, who just, when she gets a hold of a rodent or something in the yard, some mouse happens to scrape by and she crunches on it and shakes it like a rag doll. Like, that dog is living her best life. Just the expression of happiness on the dog's face is just incredible. And that's kind of what I saw on this coyote. It was just like out there having a good time. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to catch that deer, but I'm out here running and chasing things and I'm having fun.
The wild canine way. What a lovely story that coyote could likely tell. We mentioned coyotes have a knack for survival, and that's because they're highly adaptable. Coyotes live in a wide range of habitats and can be found in forests, grasslands, wetlands, and our backyards. Coyotes have become very comfortable living near people because, let's face it, we unknowingly make it easy for them. Garbage cans, outdoor pet food, brush piles, and bird feeders can all attract coyotes to our backyards. And you might ask, how does a bird feeder attract a coyote? Which is a fair question. But what animals do you see often eating from your bird feeder? Birds, obviously, but maybe also squirrels. Or have you ever seen rabbits eating seeds that have spilled on the ground from the feeder? All of these bird seed loving critters are a mighty fine meal for a coyote. So by keeping these food sources in your yard, it is an open invitation to coyotes. Now, because of this, coyotes are often spotted in urban and suburban areas. And in fact, I just recently ran into one in my backyard.
You have a coyote story too?
I have a coyote story too. I think all of us have coyote stories.
I would think so. They're so common.
They are quite common, and mine was the very stereotypical. I was just outside in my front yard, and a coyote ripped through my backyard. And I live in extreme suburbia. Like, to the left of my house is a mire, to the right of my house is dozens of window-to-window homes. And there's a lot of food opportunity, especially on trash pickup morning. That's what was going on. The trash service was driving around, garbage cans were out, and that coyote was definitely out looking for a free meal from a garbage can or the critters that eat from the garbage cans, like rats, mice, raccoons, those kinds of things. Very popular time frame to see coyote observations.
And speaking of like trash cans, as we're talking about things that might attract a coyote, something that comes to mind for me is, what else do you see eating from trash cans, particularly if the lid isn't down all the way, is cats. So if you have cats that you like to let outside in a suburban area, keep in mind that those trash cans that they're digging in, or those other food sources the cats are going after, they could make for a quick meal for a coyote. So for the safety of your pets, all of your pets, but cats especially, because they're a little bit harder to keep an eye on. If you want to keep them away from coyotes, it's best to keep them indoors.
Yes, excellent PSA. Keeping your cats inside is good for wildlife species and also just good for the safety of your pet. Because even if you do not see coyotes, they're probably still out there. They're very good at being secretive and keeping to themselves. Besides our garbage and the small backyard critters, coyotes really don't want anything to do with us. They have a very natural fear of humans, and attacks from coyotes on humans are extremely unlikely in Michigan. But certain times of the year, you may notice them more, especially during their breeding season, which begins right now and runs through March. During this time, you might see or hear more coyote activity. Those iconic yips and howls and those noises we associate with coyotes are often a mated pair marking their territory, so that's what you're hearing. But coyotes are largely recognized as the most vocal animal we have in North America, and they use auditory, visual, olfactory, which is smells, and tactile, like a physical touch, as forms of communication. Coyotes will howl when two or more members of a pack reunite and to announce to each other their locations. Their sight is a little less developed and is used primarily to note movement. They do have an extraordinary sense of hearing and smell and will use stumps, posts, bushes, or rocks as scent posts, on which they will, shall we say, excrete substances onto to possibly mark territories. Apparently, coyotes are also very good swimmers, but poor climbers. And I guess that makes sense because they are canids, after all. Now, by the month of April, pups will be on the way, and that's when things get really interesting. A mated pair and their pups will establish a home range, and they'll stay busy raising 4 to 7 pups through the spring and summer. Now, as that fall rolls around, those young coyotes, which are now fully grown, will begin dispersing to establish their own territories. And that's when you may also notice an uptick in increased sightings during that time, too. These young coyotes, known as dispersers, are sometimes more visible because they're exploring new territories. And it's part of their natural life cycle, but it's also when people might have more encounters with them. Now, these coyotes that are dispersing are young, and they haven't learned many important lessons on how to be a wild coyote yet, so they do test boundaries by exploring the areas near our homes a little closely. This is normal teenage behavior for a coyote, and similar to human teenagers, they may need a little behavioral correction. If you come across a coyote in the fall, the same techniques apply as they do any other time of the year. Just make a lot of noise by yelling, clapping your hands, making a lot of noise to scare off the coyote. Now, this technique may or may not also apply to human teenagers. You can test that out and see for yourselves. Coyotes play vital roles in our ecosystems as predators. Now, they are carnivorous, so 90% of their diet is mammals. They primarily eat small mammals such as cottontail rabbits, the 13-lined ground squirrel, or white-footed mice. But they will also occasionally eat birds, snakes, large insects, or other invertebrates. While they do prefer fresh meat, they also consume carrion, which is a word for dead stuff, such as roadkill. Coyotes help our ecosystems by lowering that small mammal or rodent populations, which is a good thing because higher populations of rodents can lead to the spread of diseases. In fact, rodents host a greater diversity of zoonotic pathogens, which means diseases that can be transmitted from animals to people, more than any other mammal order. And too many rabbits, mice, or other rodents can also degrade habitat due to overeating of plants, which can lead to the loss of important plants and erosion of soil. Now, when coyotes are hunting for these small mammals, they do it in really interesting ways. When they're on a mousing expedition, they will slowly stalk through the grass to sniff out the mouse. And then suddenly, with all 4 legs held stiffly together, the coyotes pounce on the prey. Occasionally, coyotes have been observed hunting larger prey, like deer, for example, but that calls for teamwork. Now, when coyotes are in packs, they may take turns pursuing the deer until it tires, or they may drive it towards a hidden member of the pack. There has also been well-documented evidence of coyotes sometimes forming hunting partnerships with badgers. Some of you have probably seen it. A trail camera video went viral a few years ago for a coyote and badger duo walking along together. Now, because coyotes aren't very effective at digging rodents out of their burrows, they will chase animals while they're above ground. And then badgers, who do not run quickly, but are quite ferocious and are well adapted to digging rodents out of burrows, they will work together so that when they both are hunting together, they effectively leave no escape route for prey in the area.
I love that video. I'm going to have to find it and put a link in the show notes for our listeners so they can see it. That's one of those ones. It's kind of the same look that the coyote had on its face that was running through my neighborhood a number of years back. Just pure elation and joy as it waits for its badger friend to follow it through this culvert. It's hilarious because the coyote comes back into view of the trail camera to wait and is obviously waiting for this badger. And at first you don't know what's even going on. And then along lumbers this badger. And it's just hilarious to watch this little wildlife interaction between these two species.
Yeah, I agree. The speed at which those two animals move could not be more different. So watching the coyote wait for the badger to catch up to it is quite entertaining. But yeah, just another one of those really interesting kind of mutualistic relationships between two species you would not have thought to work together to survive and thrive. Super cool that it's been documented. But also part of what makes coyotes so successful at living in so many different places is the fact that they will eat almost anything, including some plants. Now, plants like the leaves of balsam fir and white cedar, and even fruits such as strawberries or apples, can be a significant part of the diet of coyotes in the fall and winter months. And because of all of their eating habits, they actually make for great neighbors. Coyotes often provide a free pest control service right in our backyards because they feed on those peskier rodents that may cause us issues inside our homes, like mice, rats, and voles. However, not everyone is thrilled to see coyotes, and we can understand why. Coyotes have been known to pursue small pets or livestock, as we mentioned. Coyotes are territorial animals, so if they come across another canid, such as a small dog, in their territory, they can get very defensive. And like we mentioned, coyotes do eat small mammals, so if you have a small pet, such as a small dog or a small cat, coyotes can't distinguish the difference between wild animals and our small pets. And that may sound a little harsh, but it is the truth of the animal kingdom. There are simple steps you can take to prevent those kinds of interactions and keep your pets safe. As always, our number one recommendation for preventing conflicts with any wildlife species is to remove any potential food that might attract a coyote to your yard. So those food sources like trash cans that are open where food smells can escape, bird feeders that don't have a seed catch underneath them, or pet foods that are left outside, these can all entice coyotes and all your other neighborly critters to come to your backyards. Now, when it comes to pet safety, supervision is key. If you're letting your cat or your dog outside, especially in the evening or early mornings, please consider keeping them on a leash and accompanying them. You can make some noise as you head outside to alert the coyotes in the area so that they're not surprised by your presence or your pet's presence. And remember that coyotes do have a natural fear of people and will run from you when given the opportunity. You know, accompanying your pets outside also just gives you a little bit of quality time with them, so it could be a win-win situation.
I bet your dog would really enjoy the accompaniment outside so as to avoid any potential coyotes in the area, as well as just enjoy the time with you.
For sure. So if you do spot a coyote...
You're not even going to talk about your dog? I gave you that perfect intro.
I want to talk about my new dog 101% of the time, but I don't want to annoy everyone with my dog. Now that you've queued up the opportunity, I would love to talk about how much I love to take my dog outside, and my dog requires me to accompany her outside. She literally will not go out unless I go out and visit with her. And I just think she's the most adorable dog I've ever seen. So
she's a very nice dog. I will say that. Doesn't hold a flame to Coco the Chiweenie, but still.
Shut your mouth.
In terms of, dogs, still a very nice dog.
Well, we're just going to have a little dog competition, aren't we?
I mean, Coco's getting pretty old. I think your young and spry dog would probably give her a run for money. Plus, your dog's legs are a lot longer. Be a bit like the coyote badger situation.
Well, we'll have to continue having this conversation. My dog is a rescue dog, and she was quite unsure of us for about 3 weeks. So it was just until this weekend that she decided they might actually be okay and wants to play with us. And yeah, she's cute. She's a little critter. We just call her the critter because she kind of moves around like a wild animal and is quite unsure of being inside. So she's just a little wild crit. But I will be accompanying her outside because I do know that I have coyotes in my area and I do not want anything to happen to my precious pup. So I will gladly make a lot of noise as I walk out the door and keep her in a secured location. Just
Good idea.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Protect your pets, folks. What should you do if you spot a coyote? The most important thing to remember is to just stay calm. While coyotes may be curious, they are inherently very afraid of humans, and you can scare them off by clapping, yelling, or even using something like an air horn to make a lot of noise. Now, for the rare instances when conflicts do occur, like an attack on a pet, make sure to contact your local sheriff's office. And wildlife biologists can also help to handle these situations on a case-by-case scenario. But above all else, prevention is always the best course of action. So if there's not any potential food in your backyard, you're probably not going to encounter coyotes very often. Now, because the coyote population is quite abundant across our state, coyote hunting and trapping is a popular activity. Michigan has a long, rich history in the fur trading industry. And in fact, the Michigan fur trade has long-standing roots in the international fur trading industry, with major trading hubs in Fort Michilimackinac, Sault Ste. Marie, and Detroit, where furs from wildlife were collected, traded, or shipped to European markets for French garments and fabrics. Today, regulated trapping and hunting continues for a variety of reasons, from trading and selling the pelts to managing local populations of coyotes. But it is done so carefully to ensure that species are harvested while following regulations. For those interested in coyote harvesting, or you're wondering about the legal removal options in areas where hunting and trapping is allowed, the coyote hunting season runs from July 15th to April 15th, and trapping is permitted from October 15th to March 1st. However, if you're experiencing issues with coyotes and you live in an urban area where firearms can't be used, you may consider hiring a permitted nuisance control company. And also, if larger areas, such as a subdivision or a community, is experiencing high levels of conflicts or issues with coyotes, or coyotes that seem to have lost their fear of people, local governments can also coordinate with nuisance control companies to address those issues in residential areas. As we wrap up, let us remember that coyotes are curious, cautious, and a common critter that are ecologically and culturally important to us here in Michigan. Be sure to check out the Coyote Smart brochure linked in our show notes to learn more about coyotes. And if you have any follow-up questions about coyotes or honestly any other mammals, please let us know. You can record a voice memo on your phone and email it to us at dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov.
Michigan.gov/DNR Trails is your destination for trail maps, trail etiquette, and trail closure information. Trail information for biking, cross-country skiing, horseback riding, hiking, off-road vehicle riding, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, and even water trails for kayaking and canoeing are available. While you're there, remember to check out information about pet-friendly recreation, track chairs, and the Iron Bell Trail. All available at Michigan.gov/DNR Trails.
Now is your opportunity to win a Wildtalk Podcast mug. As a thank you to our listeners, we'll be giving away a mug or two every episode. Our December mug winners are Amy Pfaff and Kelly Urich. Check your email as we'll be getting in touch with you soon. They answered the question, how many eyelids does a great horned owl have? The answer is 3. They have 3 eyelids. One that goes down, one that goes up, and one that is a nictating membrane. So these translucent third eyelids, they close horizontally from the inside corner of the owl's eyes and are there to protect them from debris when the owl swoops in for the attack. To be entered into the drawing this month, test your wildlife knowledge and answer our wildlife quiz question. This month's question is, porcupines are covered in about how many quills? Give us your best estimate. We're looking for one number, not a range.
And also, we want to know if you pronounce it porcupine or porcupine.
Yeah, or porcupine. Let us know. Email your name and answer to us at dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov to be entered for a chance to win a mug. Be sure to include the subject line as Mug Me and submit your answer by January 15th. We'll announce winners and the answers on next month's podcast, so be sure to listen in to see if you've won and for the next quiz question. Good luck, everyone.
Michigan conservation officers are working hard to protect and keep the outdoors safe for current and future generations. If you witness a natural resources violation, you can call or text the Report All Poaching hotline 24 hours a day at 1-800-292-7800 or fill out the complaint form available at michigan.gov/RAP. If you would like more information on becoming a conservation officer, click on Become a CO at michigan.gov/conservation officers.
And now is the time to show our appreciation for those who have donated to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund to help us celebrate the 50th anniversary of Michigan's Endangered Species Law. An enormous thank you to Nick Lammers, who contributed $26 to rare species conservation last month. Your support makes a big difference in conserving our state's most vulnerable species. Remember, if you want to hear your name read on air, simply visit michigan.gov/wildlife and click on the link to donate. We look forward to adding more names to this list next episode. Well, thank you for joining us on the January edition of Season 8 of the Wildtalk Podcast. We are so excited to bring you a new season this year. Remember, if you have questions about wildlife or hunting, you can call us at 517-284-9453 or email us at dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov. We will see you back here in February.
This has been the Wildtalk Podcast, your monthly podcast airing the first of each month and offering insights into the world of wildlife across the state of Michigan. You can reach the Wildlife Division at 517-284-9453 or dnr-wildlife@michigan.gov.